Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pushtaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pujarine Nivasesha Sunyavari Pushtatara Satarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, thank you, Mavasacharya. Welcome, Dhruva Maharaj. Hare Krishna. We'll be speaking about Dhruva Maharaj today. Okay, welcome, Dhruva Maharaj Das. Hare Krishna. So let me share then. Now, it's interesting what we're going to go through today. Because in my original, because we taught this 2 or 3 years ago, so I have the slides there, so to speak. But each time I give this class, then I normally add some slides, take away some slides, and do a bit of editing. But I was looking for the slides on this next section, and I didn't. I actually missed this section when we taught it last. I can't think why. I'm guessing why, because we spent quite a bit of time speaking about the semblance of devotion, and I was too impatient to get to speaking about pure devotion. So I think I missed out some sections of the Suddha Bhakti Cintamani, speaking about the semblance of devotion. But this time I thought, no, let me include it. So I had to do a bit of homework. I had to go to the Suddha Bhakti Cintamani and had to create a few new slides on more details of the semblance of devotion. So I did that last week.
Boris?
Please, humble request if devotees, if you're not speaking, if you could mute your microphones. Now, this is the last slide. And although we did start this chapter, but the second part we've just done over the last week. Okay, so I quickly go through the 2 or 3 slides that we've done already without spending too much time explaining all the details. I hope we can remember. We're speaking specifically about semblance of devotion, and we spoke about the analyzing it very much into shadowy semblance of faith and reflective semblance of faith. I won't go over those details again, but just as a synopsis, the main strengths, which one's the best? Shadowy or reflective semblance of faith?
Shadowy, Prabhu.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, shadowy. So the 3 main strengths that come from that, which we discussed, although the persons get regular contact with Vaishnavas, so it does facilitate regular contact with the devotees. And by associating with devotees, one gets the opportunity to render devotional service, and that then leads to the Lord's mercy. So that's why semblance of faith is better than reflective semblance of faith, which is the Mayavadis, and we spoke about that. And just briefly, everyone's path from the semblance. This is what this whole study is about coming to Suddha Bhakti. So first is being described this semblance of devotion or impure devotion. And everyone's path is quite unique. Everyone's path to a devotional service is quite unique. It follows some common characteristics. And I think we last week or not last week, so we missed last week, but the last class, then we asked devotees to give some examples. And devotees spoke, I think 2 or 3 devotees spoke how they came to devotional service they came to the practice of pure devotional service through the semblance of devotion. Okay. And this is where we no, also we described this the week before last as well. This verse here, Chaturvada Bhajantimam Jana Sukritine Arjuna. Well-known verse in the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna speaks about 4 types of pious persons who come to him. And the next verse, 17, he speaks about 4 kinds of impious persons who do not take up devotional service. Yeah. So here he speaks about 4 kinds of persons, and we discussed that. We won't go into all the details, but they are the distressed, those who desire material gain, and the inquisitive, and the seekers of truth. So this is a summary of the different reasons, a kind of a synopsis of reasons why pious persons come to devotion. Pious persons actually take up devotional service. So we looked at that a little bit. And then we gave some examples from scripture. Perhaps devotees can say, who is it who came to devotion because they were distressed? I was one of them. Yeah, God. Distressed is
Gajendra.
Gajendra, correct. Yeah. And we told that story, Gajendra Mokshana, that's in the 8th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And the sages of Naram Sharanya, they represent who?
Inquisitiveness.
Correct. Yes, they're inquisitive, so they're hearing from Suddha Goswami. And then we have the well-known example of Dhruva. And why did he take up devotional service?
Material desires?
Yeah, material desires. That's quite well known by devotees, but it's a wonderful story in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And we'll be speaking more on this particular example today of how Dhruva's, and we're going to follow the details of how Dhruva's semblance of devotion led him to pure devotion, Suddha Bhakti. And then we have the 4 Kamaras. We're speaking of, let's see how far we get. We'll be speaking about that today as well. They came to devotion because they were seeking knowledge. Gyanis, and then they became bhaktas. Okay. And let me just scroll down my notes here. I think, yeah, so this is what we discussed the week before last. And this verse comes in the in Caitanya Charitamrita, wonderful verse which is quoted there in the Caitanya Charitamrita, actually, when our Lord Chaitanya is being speaking about this pastime to, I think it's Rupa Goswami. So I'll just read this wonderful verse here. Oh my Lord, because I was seeking an opulent material position, I was performing severe type of penance and austerity. Now I have gotten you, who are very difficult for the great demigods, saintly persons, and kings to attain. I was searching after a piece of glass, so he was searching, he was practicing the semblance of devotion. Instead, he has found Suddha Bhakti. He has found the valuable jewel of pure devotional service. And therefore, he is so satisfied that he doesn't wish, actually, he's embarrassed for the reasons that he approached the Lord. So we're going to look at that. It's very interesting. But first of all, okay, sorry, excuse me, let me go down. Yes. So how did this exactly happen? This is detailed by Sukadeva Goswami in the Srimad Bhagavatam. He gives detail how Dhruva became free of material desire. So first, if you follow the story, it was a touch of the Lord's conch shell. Yeah, just by that touch of the Lord's transcendental conch shell, I think he touched it upon his head. And at that moment, he became perfectly aware of all the Vedic conclusions. So all the essence of the Veda became revealed in a moment to Dhruva Maharaj, just by that touch of the conch of the Lord upon his head. So that meant that he understood the absolute truth, and specifically the relationship of the jivas, some Sambandha again. Yeah, he specifically became aware, fully aware. He became a self-realized soul. So he was situated from that point, he was situated in self-realization. And it's from being situated in transcendental knowledge by the blessings of the Lord that he recognized the futility of approaching the Lord to fulfill his material desires. Yeah, so he realized the folly, Shiva Maharaj describes it as the folly of fruitive quests. And instead, he realized the supremacy of pure devotion. So, again, if anyone has any questions or comments, please feel free to ask. You can unmute. It's probably best to unmute, or you can put it in a chat if you want as well. Okay, so he was finally he was free of that desire, and he was blessed with transcendental knowledge. So he became wise. He became absorbed in transcendental knowledge. So he became wise. I mean, that's how we can give up. That's ultimately how we let go of material desires. It's by developing transcendental knowledge. Then we can look and think, what is the point of desiring that? What is the point of desiring this? Sometimes I reflect on the things that I used to desire before I took up devotional service. Now I think I've been a little bit purified, a little bit purified. And now when I think back, I think, what a fool. How could I possibly be attached to that? Of course, we have to be careful because sometimes these material condition is still lingering. Yeah. But in essence, I think we're devotees here have been practicing devotional service, and hopefully we can think back and think, especially, think back and think of the things that we was obsessed with. And hopefully by following the path of pure devotion, practicing devotional service, we can look back and we're embarrassed. You know, perhaps some of you, perhaps well myself, I didn't come to the temple praying for material things. Like perhaps if you come from a Hindu background, when I was young, if anyone told me I'll go into a temple, I would just laugh at them. But I'm sure some of you come from a Hindu tradition. Perhaps you may come to the temple praying for material things. And again, but also this teaching here, Suddha Bhakti Cintamani, is quite revealing as well, because as we're discussing a semblance of devotion and comparing it with pure devotion, perhaps even now, to one degree or another, we might recognize, oh, actually, am I practicing pure devotion? It seems like, you're reckoning, oh, perhaps it's more of a semblance. So that's also something to meditate upon as well. Anyway, the point here, let's back to the story, is Dhruva became wise. And as mentioned, actually, in that verse we quoted, Chatova Durpajanti Mam Juna Sikritana Arjuna. In the next verse, if you read there in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna extols, or he glorifies the Jnani. Yeah. He glorifies the persons who have knowledge. Yeah. And that's why, so Krishna gives special recognition of all those four types of persons. He gives special recognition to the wise. Yeah. And so this story of Dhruva Maharaj explains why that is so. So it's very interesting. So, because until he gained transcendental knowledge, say he became wise, then that semblance of devotion that he had couldn't be purified. Yeah, couldn't be purified. It's only when he gained knowledge, especially about the principles of, or he gained knowledge of Suddha Bhakti, or the superiority of loving devotion to a Krishna. Yeah. So yeah, and I don't know if it's a good thing, but I was just to say there's one because I was thinking about this class this morning, and I was in a temple. There's one man there. He's coming. He's obviously come from a Hindu tradition, and he's coming to the morning program, which is wonderful. And he's got some beads. I mean, they're not japa beads, and he's kind of chanting. I don't think he's chanting a Maha mantra. He's chanting some mantra, but he's coming. So in one sense, it looks like devotion. He's coming to the temple. He's there for deity greetings. He's there for japa. But because he doesn't have knowledge of pure devotion as of yet, it's what looks like devotion is a semblance. So I was just a quick thing. I was thinking, yeah, if he stays, and especially if he stays and he hears the classes, if he stays and he hears the Bhagavatam, then he's going to, then there's a chance that he can come to the practice of pure devotional service. Yeah. So I was just thinking about that this morning. So again, Krishna, he glorifies those who are wise. Now, specifically, are the Gyanis. Now, the Gyanis that Krishna speaks about are not Mayavad Gyanis, obviously, but these Gyanis that they've realized the self, at least, and also that they know Krishna is the supreme. So he deserves veneration and the worship. But to know Krishna better, they will surrender unto him. So that's the Gyanis, specifically the type of Gyanis that Krishna is speaking about. And in the Nectar of Devotion, Shiva Raj then quotes Nectar of Devotion, where Prabhupada emphasized the two specific characteristics of these specific Gyanis that Krishna speaks of. So they have knowledge of spirit, and they have a relative purity of purpose. Because if you think about the others, those who are seeking wealth, those who are in distress, those who are inquisitive, they're kind of after something, obviously. But here, these Gyanis, they have a relative purity kind of purpose, that they want to understand Krishna. Yeah, so that's why Krishna speaks of them as being better. Now, yeah, so yeah, Krishna says here, in the verse there in the Bhagavad Gita, I am very dear to the Gyanis. Priyo hi gyano tyatam. So he's very dear to the Gyanis who are trying to understand him. So so they have some affection for Krishna, and that's going to manifest. This affection is going to manifest due to some relative purity of heart. So to the degree that the heart is pure, to that degree, one will develop faith. And that's the whole process of Krishna consciousness. Everyone heard of the word when devotees say, I'm really getting purified. Sometimes devotees say it in a negative sense, like I'm really having a hard time, I'm really getting purified. Actually, it's wonderful. That's what's supposed to happen. We're supposed to be getting purified. And then to that degree we become purified, then our faith will increase. So faith is something that is dynamic. It will grow. It will keep on growing throughout our devotional life, yeah, according to the purity of our heart. And so to the degree that the heart develops faith, to that degree one can realize Krishna. Yeah, and to the degree that one possesses transcendental knowledge, to that degree one can love Krishna. You follow? So to love Krishna, you have to know about him. You have to know about his glories, both Sambandha, Abhidheya, and ultimately Prayojana. Yes. So the more we read about Krishna, the more we know about Krishna, then to that degree we can develop affection for him. And Krishna says justice. Let me just see the next. Yeah. Okay, 1 second. And if you look at Bhagavad Gita 4:10, I thought I had this verse up on a slide, but I didn't. Vita raga bhaya krodha man maya mama pashritaha bhavo gana tapasa bhuta mutpavam agataha. Anyone know this verse? Any Bhakti Shastri students here? That's Bhagavad Gita 4:10, if you want to note it down. And Krishna says exactly this in this verse. So the translation is, being fully absorbed in me, taking refuge in me, many persons became purified by knowledge of me. Thus they all attained transcendental love for me. So it's very interesting. I learned this verse and I've read this verse many times, but specifically that the emphasis that Dhruva Maharaja gives here, that one is purified by knowledge, and then you attain transcendental love for Krishna. So we get purified. So how do we get purified? Through transcendental knowledge. And through that transcendental knowledge, one attains love for me. So it's very interesting. Yeah. So therefore, that's why Krishna, he kind of glorifies or he highlights the Gyanis because of their knowledge of devotion, although it's still a semblance, but it's a semblance of a higher category, a higher order. So what Krishna's doing is he's speaking about the seekers of truth. So he's instructing the others that everyone has to cultivate knowledge. Gajendra, he was in distress, but his contact with the Lord took him to the platform of knowledge. Yeah. And all the other 3 categories of persons as well. So if one comes to Krishna through distress, but through the story of Dhruva, we can see that Dhruva was seeking material wealth. But through knowledge, he came to pure devotion. So in other words, Krishna is instructing the other 3 classes of pious persons to cultivate knowledge. Chaturveda bhajanti mam. And Prabhupada writes this again. This is in Nectar of Devotion, chapter 3. Without being elevated to the position of a Jnani or a wise man, a devotee cannot stick to the principle of worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yeah. So in other words, it's through knowledge that we take up activities, or we take up the selfless activities of devotional service. Yeah. Otherwise, if we don't develop this knowledge, then there's a good chance that one may be distracted. Yeah. Away from the practice of devotional service. Yeah. We follow so far? Any questions or comments? Silence means yes. You've understood, hopefully. Yeah. Okay. Now, what's also interesting here is Jiva Goswami, Maharaj speaks of Jiva Goswami's commentary, especially on the Bhagavatam, that although we mentioned 4 kinds of persons, they come to Krishna, Jiva Goswami, he comments on the 2nd verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Dhamma Pujitta Kateva Chappanamo Nimatsaranam Satam. I think some devotees may know that verse. That verse describes that this Srimad Bhagavatam, it rejects all materially motivated devotion, yeah, and propounds the highest truth. So it rejects Kateva. This is the 2nd verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So, in other words, it's a kind of cheating. So, what is being brought out here is that the motivation of these 4 types of persons that we spoke about is actually a type of cheating. So Jiva Goswami, he goes on, and there's a quote here from where he describes, if a person has even one ulterior motive in devotional service to benefit himself or someone else other than the Krishna and the Vaishnavas, then that is called cheating. All right. So again, going back to that verse, Chato Vida Bhajanti Mam, although we describe the transition from semblance to pure devotion through acquiring knowledge, those 4 categories from the perspective of pure devotion is called cheating, according to the standard of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So this Bhagavatam rejects all materially motivated devotion, yeah, as kateva. So the word actually means cheating. So what's being explained here, so this definition, so a semblance of devotion is actually cheating. Okay. Whereas pure devotional service, which we're described in the next section, that is not cheating. Yeah. So now semblance of devotion and Kali Yuga. One second, I think, because I was playing around with my slides and okay, I had 2 PowerPoints which are the same, and I put different slides in one, and I think I've got the wrong one up here. But anyway, I just go along with this, what we have here. Oh, wait a minute. Let me see if I can find the other presentation. Bear with me 1 minute, because I did make some changes. It might make it easier to go through. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. 1 second. Oh, there it is. Okay, let me share the screen again. Don't go away. Stay with us. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram. Okay. Okay, because what I did is I condensed it a bit, because Maharaj goes into great detail, so I had to kind of summarize it for our easier understanding, and that's what I've done in these slides here. So, okay. So we are here. So we are, excuse me. Yeah. So you see, I changed the slide a little bit. Let me see here. Oh yeah, here's the verse which I thought I put up. I put it up in my other. This is the way I put it in this slideshow. Okay, and this is just here. Okay, just continuing here with yeah. Again, so excuse me. So back to this point that Jiva Goswami, he proclaims those 4 kinds of persons. This is kateva, cheating. And again, this quote again, if a person has even one ulterior motive in devotional service to benefit himself or someone else other than Krishna, then that is called cheating. And mentioned here also that devotional service, this is mentioned in the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, that's performed in pride or envy, or with a motive to enjoy, or even with a desire to free oneself from conditioned life, are all cheating. Okay, albeit in decreasing degrees. Now, how to understand this? Well, basically, if you think of the residents of Vrindavan, the cowherd boys and the cowherd girls, and you just think of the pastimes in Rajan and Vrindavan, that is pure devotional service. So, okay, what about even to free oneself from conditional life. It means that you're not serving out of love. Exactly. You're wanting to free yourself. So in one sense, you're wanting to free yourself. It's like desiring liberation. You want to free yourself from conditioned life. Yeah. Okay, it's better than gross serving Krishna just to fulfill one's material desires. And Sridhar Swami mentions, he gives a commentary on the second verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And can anyone say what's the foremost cheating propensity, which might be brought up here? Good to hear from some of you out there. What's the Sridhar Swami, he brings out, what's the foremost cheating propensity? Have a wild guess. I'll give you any, it's in relationship to reflective semblance of faith. Can see you all thinking.
Is it desiring to become one with God?
Correct. Well done, Mahaprabhu. The foremost cheating propensity is desire to become one with the Supreme. So that's what Sridhar Swami describes. Now, what's interesting, like you probably could read in this verse here, and this verse is well-known verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, akamo kamo moksha kamo dariditi vrena bhakti yogena yujeti purusham parasham. Yujeti purusham param. So person has broader intelligence, whether he is full of material desire. So we're just describing about Jiva Goswami's commentary that these are the four reasons are all cheating, and we gave more elaboration. But here in this verse, it's encouraging those with a semblance of devotion. Yeah. A person has broader intelligence. So this follows on from a series of verses where Sukadev Goswami is speaking about the worship of different devas to fulfill different varieties of material desire. But then he goes on, but someone who has broader intelligence, they're more broad-minded. Okay, if they're full of material desire, or they're without the desire, even if desiring moksha, worship Krishna. So interesting when we make this comparison. Now it's being recommended. This semblance of devotion here has been recommended, and Sukadev Goswami is supporting it. Yeah, so the initial declaration of Bhagavatam that it's all cheating, later on in the second canto, Sukadev Goswami seems to be supporting it. So I'll ask, why is that from our studies? I think probably some of you might get it. Or why is Sukadev Goswami supporting it? When in the beginning, Kataiva, Dhamma Pachitta Kataiva Trapanamo, Nimatsananam Satam, Vedam Vastam Atra. The Bhagavatam completely rejects all materially motivated religion. But here, it's described, Kamo Shava Kamo Moksha Kamo Dharadi. Whether you're full of material desire, if you like Dhruva, go to Krishna. We have described it when we've spoken about in the transformation of Dhruva.
Because when you go to Krishna, he fulfills your material desires so that you lose your attachment for it.
Yeah, Marvelavanga got it again. Yeah, it's quite simple. Yeah, yeah, because basically a semblance of devotion, it brings, you could say, impure practitioners from Jiva Goswami's perspective or Bhagavatam's perspective, cheaters. It kind of brings them in touch with the highest good, brings them in touch with the devotees, and points them in the right direction. Yeah. So even though one may take up devotional service for one's own sense gratification, the Lord encourages He does it with kind words. Shiva Ramswami Maharaj describes. He does it with kind words. So, in other words, so they become inspired by the Lord's benevolence. And even if they, they have confidence that the Lord is going to, just like Dhruva, he was praying to the Lord. He was praying to the Lord because he was confident that the Lord would fulfill his desires, his semblance of his material desires. So Dhruva, so with that in mind, like Dhruva, he was very exacting. He was very determined in his sadhana, which he got from Pacific sadhana that he got from Narada Muni. So this is why Krishna encourages the indirect path. So in other words, he's trying to induce those who do not have complete knowledge, transcendental knowledge, you could say the less intelligent, don't have transcendental knowledge. So they're seeking to fulfill their own desires. They take up devotional service. Yeah. So because what's going to happen is they're going to become purified by the potency of devotional service, by the potency of the association of the devotees, and by the potency of devotional service. It's going to purify the heart. And that's what we mentioned many times in this study of semblance of devotion. I mean, that's why when people come to devotional service, then we're not going to analyze too much why they're coming. I think I said before, it's not as if we have on our reception, it's not as if Tripad has to ask everyone why they're coming. And if they're coming to fulfill something material, no, sorry, you can't come in. No, we're devotees in one sense. Krishna, yeah, akamo shava kama va moksha kama, come. Yeah. This is Krishna's kindness because they're going to get purified by the potency of devotional service. So they're going to, at some point, they're going to become indifferent to the reasons why they approached Krishna or devotional service. And then they become interested in pure devotion. Yeah. So it's interesting when, sometimes we have, as you know, those who are familiar with our temple, we have some very wealthy persons come to our temple. And they used to come, there's one particular, he doesn't come so much now, Mr. Hinduja, nice person, he used to come. And they would stay later on a Sunday. On the Sundays in our temple, then we recite the Shishastakam. And they're quite open why they're coming. They're coming because Krishna's going to fulfill their desire, have a sense of devotion, but the main reason to come in is so that they can continue accumulating wealth from there. So they're trying to do some piety in order to please Krishna. So I often wonder when we chant Shishastakam, when we start Najanam Nadanam na sundarim bhagatam jagada karishyam. As it was, Nadanam Najanam na sundarim. So
Kavitamba Gajadisha Kamaye, Mama Jamnanishvari.
Bhagavat Bhakti Vaititavi. So Nadanam. So I used to watch them recite a verse. I used to be awkward reciting it. But the point I'm getting here is that persons who come to devotional service, come to the temple, start associating with devotion, they're going to start hearing about principles of pure devotion. Nadanam, najanam, na sundarim, kavatam, atakadane. Yeah? They're going to start hearing about these principles of pure devotion. Okay, some will stop coming but if they're somewhat fortunate, especially if they develop a relationship with the devotees and they're impressed by the devotee's character, or the atmosphere affects them, or the kirtan affects them, the kirtan of the devotees affects them, they're going to like what they're coming, like what they're experiencing, they're going to keep coming. Yeah. So in other words, so at some point, just like Dhruva, he became indifferent. Yeah. And then through transcendental knowledge, took up pure devotion. Now, also here, Shiva Ram Raj brings out that devotion actually plays a role for the success of any specific discipline, be it Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, or practicing some type of mystic yoga. The results of their practice is dependent upon some level of acknowledgement of the Supreme to fulfill their goals. So they have to have some sense of that. When a Jnani is doing yoga, they have to have some sense that they're dependent upon the Supreme. Now, they may not know in detail who the Supreme is. They may not be fully aware of Krishna, but they have to be aware of some sense of the universal Supreme Controller. And if they're doing their yoga with acknowledgement of that, even if they're doing it to get mystic powers, but they have some type of appreciation of the Supreme, even though they might not be clear what that Supreme is, then and only then will they get the results of their practice. Yeah. So whether it's karma, so even if it's karma, you're doing karma yoga, you're engaging religious ritualistic activities specifically for your material well-being. You have to have some appreciation that it's dependent, the success of your ritual is not dependent on just the ritual, it's dependent upon the Supreme, whatever concept they have of the Supreme. You understand how it works? Then to that degree, Krishna will give them the fruits of their endeavor. That's why, and we have this Yeyata mampapadyante tamtateva bhajamiham mamat vadamvatande manusyupata sarvashaha. Anyone know the translation to this verse? Yeyata mampapadyante tamtateva bhajamiham. Anyone else? Anyone apart from Navangalataka? She's got 2 points already. Yeyata mampapadyante tamtateva bhajamiham. Think of what I was just describing. Krishna, he fulfills. I'm kind of giving it away here. Okay, I'll give you a clue.
Okay, the first word.
As.
As one surrenders to me, I give echo to, no, the whole thing is,
Yeah.
to the degree one surrenders, to that degree I reciprocate.
Correct. Yeah, you got it from that one word, as.
I needed that. Yeah, I needed
one word. So yeah, as all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. In that sense, everyone's following this path. Yeah. Not the path necessarily of Suddha Bhakti, but the path of dependence upon God for your specific activity, karma, jnana, or yoga. If you're doing it independent of that, then good luck. Yeah. So as they surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Okay. Okay, let's go a bit deeper. It's okay. Go a bit deeper. Yes. On this interesting discussion here as well. So, what about semblance of devotion and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? What is he coming to give? Is he coming to give a semblance of devotion? Yeah.
He's giving pure devotion.
He's giving pure devotion. And this is really an interesting discussion here that Lord Chaitanya has with Ramananda Roy. And it really brings this out. So again, but first it's clear that while Suddha Bhakti is the ultimate goal for all souls, as we've established, the Vedic system recommends for some the semblance of devotion, others to practice pure devotion. So that's to accommodate different degrees, various degrees to which conditioned souls are able to kind of digest or understand spiritual principles. So for some, in the Vedas, it's going to recommend a path of semblance, and we describe that a bit more, why that is so, and others the path of pure devotion. So then Shiva Maharaj brings out the question here that whether this recommendation that we find in the Vedas, this applies to the 21st century. Are we still in the 21st century? You're in the 21st century. And especially for Lord Chaitanya's followers. Yeah. And in the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela, there's a wonderful conversation between Lord Chaitanya and Ramananda Roy. They met on the banks of the Godavari. And the Lord Chaitanya asked Ramananda Roy to recite a verse from scripture concerning the ultimate goal of life. It's interesting that the answer that Ramananda Roy gave, because he was an unadulterated, pure devotee of the Lord. But the answer, does anyone know what the first answer he gave? This is a bit of a testing question.
Was it Varnasrama?
Yeah, correct. Well done. 3 points for Lavangalatika. Well done. Yeah, he gave it described. He stated that by executing the prescribed duties, then that's in the Varnashram, then you can please Lord Vishnu. And you can find verses like that, even in Bhagavad Gita. Yeah. So worship of Lord Vishnu through one's prescribed duties in Varnashram. Now, that has to be understood as well, because it doesn't just mean doing your duties and not engage in any activities of worship. Your duties have to be also at the same time you engage in worship of the Lord. But for some, they're on the misunderstanding that if you just do your duty, then that's going to please the Lord. No, your duty should include regulated devotion or regular devotion to the Lord. So anyway, so he gave that answer. So Varnashram. So Lord Chaitanya said, this is external. Tell me some other means. So he wanted more. So then Ramananda Roy, he presented more elevated yet, as we discussed, more elevated yet semblance, more elevated than that, but still impure devotional service, so-called shadow, Bhakti Abhas. So finally, so I won't go through all in detail, but eventually, Lord Chaitanya continued to reject each response until Ramananda Roy finally described about pure loving devotion as the ultimate goal and pure devotional service as a means to achieve it. Yeah. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he gives a commentary on this, that actually he accepted Ramananda Roy's initial descriptions. Yeah. The initial of Varnashram, he did accept it. He didn't say no. He just said it's external. Go on. Now, Bhaktivinoda Thakur brings out, because these ideas are not part of his transcendental Sankirtan movement, which is based on pure devotion. That's why Lord Chaitanya said no. He didn't say more. You follow? Because Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement is based on pure devotion. So that's what the Lord wanted to hear. Yeah. So, in other words, Ramananda Roy was describing the indirect path to devotion. Lord Chaitanya wanted to hear the direct path. Yeah, that's the path which comes from the spiritual world. Yeah. And yeah, so this indirect path, this is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita as well. There's a verse here. I think I put here. This is a slide I put up just now here. For one, this is Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, text 3. One who is a neophyte in the Eightfold Yoga system work is said to, looking at that from the perspective of being a semblance of devotion. Work is said to be the means, but for one who is already elevated in yoga, cessation of all material activities is said to be the means. So pure devotion is said to be the means. So, and I looked at the purport for this today, and Prabhupada speaks about the yoga ladder. I'll read part of it. The process for linking oneself with the Supreme is called yoga. It may be compared to a ladder for attaining the topmost spiritual realization. This ladder begins from the material condition of the living entity, so semblance of devotion, and rises up to perfect self-realization in pure spiritual life. Let's see that as Suddha Bhakti. According to various elevations, different parts of the ladder are known by different names. But all in all, the ladder is called yoga and may be divided into 3 parts: Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. And there's more just concerning the Eightfold Yoga system. Attempts in the beginning to enter meditation for regulative principles of life and practice and different sitting postures are considered fruitive material activities. All such activities lead to achieving perfect mental equilibrium to control the senses. Now, the point I want to get to is this point. And at the end, he says in his purport to this verse 6.3, a Krishna conscious person, however, is situated from the beginning on the platform of meditation because he always thinks of Krishna. So we introduce persons to the practice of pure devotional service and remembering Krishna. And because he always thinks of Krishna and being constantly engaged in the service of Krishna, he is considered to have ceased all material activities. Okay. So although such a alternative as is authorized by Shastra, you see that Prabhupada nor Lord Chaitanya recommends it. So we should good to take note of this point. And why is that? Bhaktivinoda Thakur mentions that there is many drawbacks to this indirect path to pure devotional service. Okay, so then I read this from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Okay, this is from his Harinam Cintamani. So everyone's listening? Ready? Do some reading? Take a couple of minutes. In Kali Yuga, the indirect devotional paths are extremely narrow and hazardous. Originally, they were intended to lead one to the shrine of devotional service through the company of saintly persons or through the process of offering to the Lord the results of work performed without desire. So we discussed that, isn't it? In Kali Yuga, however, both paths are contaminated. One rarely sees saintly persons because pseudo-spiritualists have replaced them. And religious duties generally are no longer performed for purifying the consciousness, but merely for enjoying material results. Therefore, these secondary paths are no longer useful. And even he says here at the end, even the process of deity worship, which gave the highest spiritual success in Dwapara Yuga, has become impure and degraded. All right. But what he's meaning there, persons who are materially motivated are just worshipping deity to suit their own material, to serve, to fulfill their own material desires. But when the pure Vaishnavas, they worship deity, it's on the path of Suddha Bhakti. Okay, so we should understand that. Okay?
Yes, yes. Yeah, because
Oh.
he was more talking on like, not the practice that Prabhupada's teaching us, but deity worship, but the practice that goes on in India in different temples, things like that.
Yeah, because we have been given a process of deity worship to facilitate, to help us to practice pure devotional service, to help us to chant the holy name. And that is a whole big discussion. All acharyas worship deities, but they're worshipping deities on the path of Suddha Bhakti. Yeah.
Yeah, it's part of preaching anyway, isn't it?
Yes, yes. But interesting here, it'd be good to, if anyone can ask Bhakti Thakur exactly what he meant here. Yeah. All right. Now, there's a few more slides on this semblance of devotion. What time we got? We got 6 minutes. So let's hear some more. I did tell you before that this is philosophy, 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 and more philosophy. But it all brings out the wonder, the wonderful nature of pure devotion. So that's coming. But now, what about Varnasrama? Okay, let's have a little discussion on this in relationship to semblance of devotion, as we've just spoken about. So someone may question, so Prabhupada, as we know, he said that 50% of his work is not done, and there's many quotes and many conversations where Prabhupada would emphasize instituting Varnasrama. When we just read that more or less Bhakti Thakur, he declared it ineffective. Yeah. And Lord Chaitanya, he said when it was first brought up to him by Ramananda Roy, he said, this is external, go on. So we hear Prabhupada put emphasis on it. So we discussed that. So he saw that that Varnasrama could be effective if its external form was adjusted to facilitate its essential purpose. So what's the essential purpose of Varnasrama?
To put everyone in that right position doing their, like, brahmacharis and...
Yeah, well, no, but that is Varnasrama, but its purpose, what it should lead to, what should Devi Varnasrama lead to?
That you move from one ashram to another, and you come to
Pure devotional service, basically. Yeah,
I mean, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu rejected because he's coming up to, he wanted to talk more about the highest.
yeah, pure devotion. So the underlying purpose of everyone being situated according to their psychophysical nature is so that they could elevate persons from any level of spiritual advancement to ultimately in society, ultimately to pure devotion. Okay, so the external form of Varnasrama is there to facilitate this purpose, to bring everyone to pure devotion to God. That's the ultimate purpose of Devi Varnasrama. So, although Bhakti Thakur, he said that the traditional form of Varnasrama has decayed, Srila Prabhupada saw its underlying purpose must be fulfilled. The underlying purpose to bring everyone to practice pure devotional service. So in order to accomplish that, Prabhupada preserved the essential purpose of Varnasrama, but he adapted it, for modern times. Yeah. So I just read this sentence here. ISKCON is the form Srila Prabhupada chose for organizing Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement into a society. To fulfill Varnasrama's essential purpose in ISKCON, he chose to institute 4 regulative principles and chanting minimum 16 rounds of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Okay, so just follow this for now. It will become more clear. So in the traditional Varnasrama system, first one is trained to be nice in aspects of semblance of devotion, to be trained in pious deeds. Yeah. So trained in cleanliness, be truthful, take on some austerities and be merciful. Yeah. So these are the practices of, what one is taught in the traditional Varnasrama setting. And now in Srila Prabhupada's contemporary Varnasrama structure, and there's a lot more aspects of it, but just for now, to achieve the essential purpose, the first thing we teach people, what's the first thing that we teach people? Cleanliness?
You are not the body.
Chant Hare Krishna.
Uh,
That's the first thing. So in that sense, devotees are once engaged in chanting Hare Krishna as the means to please the Lord. So, and only by service, by cultivating, and selflessly serving the Sankirtan mission. So in this way, this is Prabhupada's ISKCON Society members are firmly situated on the direct path. You follow? You've just finished here. So I just read these couple of sentences here. By the holy name's incomparable potency, pure faith at once awakens in devotees and makes them eligible for the activities of pure devotion. So remember that the ultimate means of Devi Varnasrama is to bring one to a pure devotion. So Prabhupada gave the essentials, the regulative principles, and the chanting of the holy name. Yeah. So thus, Srila Prabhupada's followers do not need to wade through the quagmire, Maharaj describes it, of rules and regulations governing pious acts and the semblance of devotion. Yeah. They need only chant Hare Krishna. And this is a quote from Jiva Goswami from his Bhakti Sandarbha. And was someone just finishing here? Would someone else like to read this from Jiva Goswami? Going once.
Hare Krishna.
Go ahead. Thank you, Baba Sangeeta.
Yeah. By performance of a kirtana, one attains faith in the Lord far greater than that attained by meditation or any other spiritual method. Kirtana brings to an end the cycle of repeated birth and death. By performing meditation in the Satya Yuga, one does not attain as deep a faith in the Supreme Lord. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Yeah. So many aspects of Srila Prabhupada's, could say, contemporary Varnasrama structures. We haven't spoken about that, about farm communities, etc. So we're stressing the heart of Varnasrama system, which is chanting and also spreading Krishna consciousness. So that in itself elevates and fixes devotees in pure devotional service. So it's 7 o'clock, so perhaps we'll pause there. I hope this wasn't too complicated. I hope it wasn't too detailed. I hope it was some interest. But we'll continue next week, and please join us. We're going to go into a little bit more deeper. How is it possible to go deeper in this subject of semblance of devotion? We'll go more. So we're going to look at next week, we're going to look at Kama Mishra Bhakti, Jnana Mishra Bhakti, Yoga Mishra Bhakti. Okay, we're going to look at something called Aropa Siddhi Bhakti, Jnana Mishra Bhakti, as I mentioned, Sangha Siddhi Bhakti, Yoga Mishra Bhakti. Okay, so look at that. Okay, so please join us. Thank you for joining us for today's reading and study. Hare Krishna. And I wish everyone a wonderful Janmashtami. We have Janmashtami coming up on Saturday. So that will be wonderful. And Prabhupada's Vyas Puja on Sunday. So I wish everyone have a wonderful time. And look forward to diving into this subject next week. Jai Shri Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Srimad Prabhu.
Krishna Prabhu,
Jai.
thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Pure devotional service ki jai. Hare Krishna. Hare
Very
Krishna.
nice class. Very,
Krishna,
very
Hare
nice.
Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram.
And Shubha Pasya Kripa Sindhu Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavyo.
He